To order. Two announcements that affect the agenda. One is that I'd like to have Steve give his report first. The second is that I inadvertently forgot to include Carrie Vaughn's talk on agriculture and things, so we'll put that in there somewhere as we get
committee reports.
under committee reports. We'll put that in. Thank you. Steve?
Thank you.
You want me to do that?
Yeah, if you don't mind. I'm passing around a report, so I'd like to go over some information with you before you get it. Back in October, I had informed the board that we had asked Dr. Rick Reardon, the head of education at Castleton University, to evaluate our varied external programs. And I'm just calling them external because they were a combination of alternative programs and special ed programs, so that one term would substitute for all the various types of programs they are. These programs consist of V19, On Point, Quantum Leap, Ideals, and Twilight. When I arrived, V19 was described as a social emotional program. The On Point program was had more ties to a social emotional program. It was described as sort of a more intense social emotional program. Quantum Leap was a dropout prevention and summer transition program. Ideals is an intense special needs program for students with physical and intellectual disabilities. And Twilight is an evening program for students who work during the day. As I was visiting these various programs, as an outsider, it appeared to me that they were rather confusing and there was no delineation as to where one ended and the other began. So to ensure our students were receiving the proper service they needed and were placed accurately, I had asked that the program be evaluated. Dr. Rick Reardon, who has worked with the district on numerous occasions, was chosen, and he met with the administration, and he was instructed to look for overlaps in programming and gaps in programming, along with any other inconsistencies he would find. The following month, Dr. Reardon began his evaluation process. The process consisted on various observations and discussions with all layers of staff. The process took approximately 6 months and ended with the report that you have before you. A week or so after receiving the report, the administration met one last time with Dr. Reardon for any clarification or questions that we had about the report. A week or so after receiving this, we then reviewed the report in a series of administrative meetings to begin to troubleshoot and look at the issues that were presented. Following this process, we met with all of the staff of our external programs to explain the report, to discuss how we intended to proceed, and then made a copy of the report available to the employees who worked within these various programs for them to look at and read and review. Any staff member was then offered the opportunity for any discussion or clarification in the future. The report is in excess of 30 pages. It starts with an introduction and then breaks it down to Dr. Reardon's review of the individual aspects of the various groups that I had mentioned to you. Some of the key takeaways from his evaluation on the areas that need improvement. Number one, staff training. Number two, intake and exit criteria for the programs. And the collection of use of data to drive programming and instruction. In August, we will be organizing a group to look at creating the framework for more effective alternative and special education programming to our variety of offerings. So basically, what we perceive happened over the course of several years is these programs probably started out the way they were explained to me. As I explained, I was told at the beginning as a social emotional program through a variety of alternative programs. Intake and exit criteria is criteria that is designed either by the school, by advisors, by committees, or by the special education department, or a combination of all of the above, which determines what is required for a student to be placed in that particular program. It is not to be an arbitrary process, because then the program doesn't have any function. It becomes a sort of storing house. And that's one of Dr. Reardon's findings, is we had no intake criteria. So what started as a social emotional program over the years had transitioned of, we have this student, we don't know where to put him, let's put him there. And that's when the lines became blurry as to what the program actually was. Exit criteria is philosophically the same in reverse, of what criteria it needs to be established for that student to move on from that program. Now, in some of these particular programs, special ed programs, these students will come in and probably age out at the end of the program. But in an alternative setting, as in most alternative settings, the ultimate goal is to have students come back into the mainstream. And exit criteria determines what these students must meet in order to get back into the mainstream. There does not appear to be any exit criteria, which means they are either moved upon teacher's recommendation or they are moved for the sake of being moved, but there is no defined reasoning for a student to be placed or removed from the program. And that's how the lines became blurred over the course of the years. And that's what we are looking to do. We are planning to take next year. We have asked several people without going into, some have shown interest, some have confirmed, some have not, so I don't want to get into too many names, but we have approached, under recommendation, someone from a major high school in Vermont who runs the alternative section of this high school to be part of a committee with us. We are looking to get some community members. I have talked to some about being on board, and it will expand from there to get the input to begin to look at what these programs should be. Theoretically, in its simplest sense, we should have a social emotional program, which is for identified social emotional diagnoses that put students in that program, where you work on behaviors for those students. The other program would be an alternative program, which is basically for students who, for a variety of reasons, may or may not function well within what is known as the structured school day that exists now. So, for example, in our 85-minute day, there may be some students who have difficulty being able to concentrate and focus beyond 30 minutes or 40 minutes. Students who need to do more project-based learning, who need to get off campus more, who basically have to do things that involves their hands, maybe take advantage of more flexible pathways. And that's what the alternative program would be. So it is our goal over the next year to begin to create entrance and exit criteria, create the formation of what those programs would look like, and make sure that all the staff that are assigned to those programs are trained. Because of the fact that our programs have become meshed over the years, there's no one area of training we can specialize in, because it doesn't really attach itself to one thing. So basically, that is the report. Please feel free to go over it at your leisure. If you have any particular questions, either about the entire report, about any individual programs, please feel free to contact me. I'm here over the summer, and I would gladly go over the report with you or answer any of your questions.
Thank you very much, Steve. It's a comprehensive approach to a problem, not a problem, but an opportunity to take full advantage of what we have. Some of these programs have been an integral part of the high school and the community for a long time. And we have some members of those programs who have been doing it for a long time. And I think we have to be sensitive to that, and I'm sure that you are. My suggestion would be that rather than have people call you individually, that we work through the education committee after the school begins, and maybe we could call a meeting and have that meeting, I haven't spoken with Amy about it yet, but have a meeting where you could go over some of those things, and it would give us, or those people, a chance to read the report, formulate questions, and understand a little bit more about what's going to happen. I think this is not an appropriate time to do that, but if you would consider that, I think it makes a lot of sense, so that we know what's happening.
Whatever works best for everyone in the group.
Right? Nelson, sorry.
Yeah, I've been watching those programs over the years, and I have to agree with some of the things I just read in the report, with us having a hard time keeping up with changing times. And I think that's the best way I would say it. The times are changing, have been changing, and we need to move a little quicker to make that happen. And I'm assuming you're working closely with our superintendent, who certainly has worked with other schools with similar programs, that I hope will be able to bring some people in along with the one that you talked about. Because I think, one of the things that's always bothered me is the children that are lost, as I call them. It's the ones in the middle that seem to be in these groups that really, when they get out of school, they're sort of lost in where to go and what to do. And I'm hoping that we can do something to solve that problem.
Good. Leon, did you have something?
Well, I'm trying to make sure when I'm shocked to hear this way, because we've been told all along, and this is why I want to get some clarification of how kids get in these programs. And I thought it was an agreement with parents and the committee and administrators together that says this is what and how and where our kids should be placed along this line to get certain type of services. Am I mixing something up? Because this is how they get in those areas. Is that?
These are 5 totally different programs, and how students get into these 5 programs is different in almost every case. And there's a little bit more structure in special education, for example, than in non-special education programs.
And I'm probably referring to special education programs, how they get managed out there. But these are not under that particular program per se.
Not all of these are special education programs.
That's right, okay. So now I'm just trying to make sure that when the media hear what we're saying out here.
And for clarity's sake, of the 5 programs, you will see that there are a couple of programs, and one in particular is attached to our intensive high needs special education students, where it's fairly structured of how they get in there and how long they stay and what they have to do, that Dr. Reardon praised.
Okay, so that's, I mean, these others that are out here, our goal was to try to pull kids out, give them some help, but we don't formally have a way of getting them out of it, is what the report.
I think that, thank you, Leon. I think rather than go into a lot of details, why don't we get a chance to absorb what's in this report? It'll take a while, and with Amy's help, we'll have an education meeting, and we can explore the different alternatives and better understand what some of the concerns that are expressed in this report. Steve, do you have anything else?
Yes, Ashley, who could not be with us this evening, asked if I would read her end of the year report to the board.
Good.
So if you'll allow me, Ashley says, the winter season was very successful. We had 339 student athletes participating on 20 sports teams. Girls basketball and cheerleading led with the honor roll percentages, coming in at 76.93% of all participants, earning a spot on the honor roll. Winter season as a whole had 48% of student athletes make the honor roll. Every team, with the exception of one, made the playoffs, and we were crowned state champions in wrestling for the 31st year in a row, and the school's 100th overall. In boys Nordic skiing took home a state championship, the first since 2010, and put us at 101 as a school. Varsity basketball, wrestling, skiing, and swimming had a win percentage of just under 70%. Varsity dance and cheerleading had very respectable seasons, collecting top 3 performances in nearly every competition they intended. Indoor track had 3 individual state championships and a great showing at the New England Championship. The spring season can be summed up as very wet. Teams battled the rain all season, moving practices inside and postponing many games due to unplayable surfaces. The grounds crew insists that this has been the worst spring in years, but we got through it. We had 433 student athletes participating on 17 sports teams. Varsity boys tennis led the way academically, having 88% of their roster make the honor roll. We had just over 50% of high school student athletes make the honor roll, making the spring the second highest honor roll average behind the fall. We had our first track meet held under the lights, which our team and visiting teams and families really enjoyed. We played senior lacrosse games on Spinelli, a request from our senior players and coaches, and it was a great experience for all, and our stands were filled. All teams, with the exception of one, made the playoffs, and we had an individual state champion for track and field. Respectfully, Ashley Hoyt.
Thank you very much. Do we have a copy of those that's going to be distributed, or was there just the one?
I'll get that distributed to you.
Very good, if we could just.
I don't have the electronic copy, but I'll
Fine.
get Ashley.
If you have a report and give it to Richard, he can put it in the minutes.
Okay, we can do that.
Yes,
Is he leaving early? Is that
Yes.
why?
Yes, yeah.
I have a sort of related question.
just 1 second. Any questions on the athletic report? Thank Ashley for, yes. Ed.
Do we have a graduation rate for Mount Anthony?
Annually, we do. We don't have one for this year yet. We haven't done any of the data for this
Okay.
graduating class, but we will get that to you. Usually, we do that in the fall, so we will bring that to you in the fall.
Okay, I'd also like to know, and I don't know how we measure it anymore because I think the state dropped the testing, but how do we know how many of the graduates are actually at grade level? Because I've seen numbers in the state where where they've said things like, we have a 92% statewide graduation rate, but only 50% of the kids are actually graduating at grade level.
Well, our state testing gives projected based on what the projected average score of the state would be in comparison to what ours is. And when we present those in the fall, you'll have that data
Okay,
also.
thank you.
Would that be the SBAC that would give that? Okay. As Steve said, though, I think those results are in, but we'll wait till they're analyzed and we'll be appraised of it in the fall. Yes, Dave?
Steve, last meeting you spoke about physical education testing. You said you would, I asked how we do on that. Have you got that data yet?
Not yet. This is the first year that we did that. We had participation rate data, but we haven't analyzed what the outcome data is yet. I do believe we have that. I don't know if the PE department is finished doing that.
Amy?
Yeah, I've had more than a dozen families reach out to me about the noise level at graduation from families in the stands and just a lot of noise so that families couldn't enjoy graduation. Have you,
I received those complaints.
okay, is that something that is,
Steve and I have discussed that.
Okay.
And I also discussed it with Paul Danzaro, that, you know,
Okay.
what are some, so it certainly came to the aware of the administration.
okay,
When we go outside, as opposed to in the gym, decorum does shift, but Steve and I have already had some preliminary discussions about what maybe we can do differently, about layout, maybe additional speakers, because we hear that it really kind of breaks down once you get beyond the white chairs, and what we're up on the stage looks like a relatively calm event. When you get further deep into
Yeah.
the bleachers, our understanding is there was some distracting behavior that
I'm
it
wondering
made
if-
it difficult for others to enjoy.
I'm wondering if even just some staff, I mean, I would think people would respond to,
I think that,
I think that's all a part of
The discussion
discussion as
for the
we
future.
debrief
That's what I'm-
how it
yeah.
went, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
the staff participates in another, the teaching staff are in robes up front.
sure,
Yeah.
I meant like SU, or
So they were there.
something.
We did have, like, the security team was on site, police officers were on site.
Mm-hmm.
But we realized we need to try and do more.
Okay.
Because
Great.
And it's
So-
not the first year that we've heard, that,
Okay.
you know, our experiences. The sad thing about when the weather doesn't cooperate and graduation moves inside is how many people cannot come in
Sure.
and witness it. But the decorum is totally different
Yeah.
than when you're out on the football field.
Yeah.
Ed?
Yeah, I've received some of the same complaints, and following up on the inside thing, I had people express the thought they prefer it inside because there aren't as many people there and they're quieter, and you can actually hear what is going on.
Well, I think it's been brought to the attention of the administration, and they'll hopefully come up with something to work on. Steve, do you have anything else? Oh, sorry, Ed. Yeah.
This has been one of the things I've always asked about when it came, and this is an Ashley question for her, and she, and I think they probably working on this, and I know some changes have been made out there when it comes to the students and their ability to do well in the classroom and compete outside of the classroom as well. And so I see as a positive, some of the coaches are putting in much more of an effort to make sure that their student athletes are doing academic work prior to their practice. I think I just got an email with one of them saying, hey, next year coming up, the first thing is going to happen with the players in a particular sport, we're going to sit down before the meeting and talk about classroom things that boost their educational efforts. What I'm looking for along that line is whether that's something that's going to be broadly taken on, whether this is a person that's just saying, I'm going to do that, or whether that's something that we're going to be trying to ask all of the coaches, and this is my question for Ashley, whether they're going to be trying to do that. Because what I said before, the students participate in the classroom, and then they run here in the gyms and outdoors up to 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and they need to make sure, we need to be making sure that if they need special attention, that they're getting it all. And secondly, whether there is a list of types of things or points or areas that should be calls for some attention in the area associated with the athletes in terms of massive problems in one group of kids or something along that line. And I don't know whether she have that kind of information or not. I'll put it that way.
I will pass that on to her.
Okay.
If she has it, I'm sure she'll get it to you.
Thank you. Any other questions of Steve? Steve, good luck. Give our best to your wife. Hope things are
Thank you.
good luck. Right. Okay, well, go into the regular meeting. Are there any public comments? Okay, we can move on then. Jim, would you just simplify the need for the new board member for the
Yes.
SSU?
The state board did honor our request to rescind their order from February of 2013 that MAU will now go back to 3 members starting July 1. And because the new Union Elementary District will have 3, which is what the statute requires. So this board should, at its leisure, and tonight would work, vote a 3rd member. That person will serve until March reorganization in 2020, and there'll be now 3 members. So that'll start, if you have a meeting in July, you wouldn't come to next week's meeting because there's still all the other elementary meeting, board members are still there.
Very good. Well, giving us a little thought, we thought it would be appropriate for Ron Higgins to take that position. He is the alternate to the SVSU. So I'd like a motion to have him.
Can we have a little discussion?
Yeah, sure. We can.
Yeah, whose members now will be taking place?
Who's number what?
In this new board,
Okay,
who are
so,
the members that
so
we
there
vote?
are 8 members from the 4 elementary districts whose term will expire June 30th because their district doesn't. So the new Union Elementary Board elected 3 members. They will start serving in July, and there'll be 1 member from North Bennington because that's a non-operating school district gets 1. So the SU will have 7 members until sometime after November when Arlington will elect 3 members and Sandgate will elect 1, and then the board will go back up to 11.
So there's 3 from the new elementary, 3 from here, and 1 from North Bennington?
Yes,
That's what I was trying to.
yeah, so 7 until the other 2 districts join us.
And the elementary has already appointed their 3?
Yes, they did, yep.
All right, do we have a motion then for Ron?
I have another question just
Yeah,
regarding that.
yeah.
The elementary district, did they have any criteria for the 3 that they picked? And the reason I'm asking is that right now, the SU is regional. It's going to be a little bit different afterwards. And did they,
So
From different
no, they did
towns.
not, and it's not an appointment like appointing somebody to the ag committee. The board voted.
right, the board votes?
Votes.
But it wasn't something where they guaranteed that it was a resident of three different of the old districts?
No.
Okay.
No, the makeup of the SU district itself, there's 2 from all 4 towns. So the new union board is 8 members, 2 from each, and they elected 3 of those 8, but they did not do it
Right.
by community.
Okay,
They would
any-
need a 4th member.
Any other questions?
Or just have it be a consideration. is what I'm saying.
If not, to have a motion to have Ron take that position until next March, I
moved.
guess. Do you have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? Congratulations. Ron, can you
Goes right
make
there.
sure that he gets those?
Yep, when Richard sends Karen the minutes, then she will add him to the list.
Very good. We can go down through the finance report now. The treasurer's report. Just, you want to accept the report? Have a motion? So moved.
Second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed or abstentions? Okay. We have a heating fuel proposal.
And there's the recommendation.
The recommendation is, okay, I haven't gone over this.
The water bid too.
Barbito
Yes. That was,
Energy.
Yes.
yep.
Okay, did anybody have a question on that? There were a number of bidders?
I'm gonna approve it. I just had a question just before that. Just a,
You're,
I don't know, you want me to answer it now?
Sure.
What I don't understand is why we have so few people that are actually bidding on these things. If you look at that sheet, there was a lot of people that did no bids
I
in
can't,
terms of that. We had
It was up here that
no
they did
bids.
not bid. So
Yeah.
it went out to 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and only 3 bid.
Yeah, and we had 3 bidders out of it, out of 10. And I don't understand what's going on along that line. The purpose of the bid is to make sure that we get a competitiveness out here, and whether is there something in the way these things are written. That's a straightforward one. They talked about fuel bid, but I just don't know why we didn't get no bid. I mean, we're getting no bids.
I can't answer that.
And so nobody.
We'll ask Renee, and maybe she has a better understanding of it.
Some of these people have owned some of the other oil companies. That's probably part of it. That's why you've only ended up with 3. So
be.
that's been out there.
All right, we need a motion then to accept the
So
bid.
moved.
We have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions?
Richard, do you have the bid sheet?
Okay. The budget status report, we have a motion just to accept it.
So moved.
Second it?
Second it.
Any questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay, and the last item is the update on the construction. Jim is gonna.
Yeah, I was gonna address it in my report, but I didn't realize it was there, so I'll do it. So the bid for the front office and front entrance security renovations came in well over the figure that the design engineer had estimated. In fact, back in March, they gave us a rough range of $374,000 to $585,000. And then the engineer gave a more precise cost estimate of $467,000 to do both projects, the front entrance and the office. One bidder, Leon,
Yeah.
one bidder
One.
came back at $644,000, well above the estimated cost of $467,000. So Paul and I met, and we asked the engineer to go back and separate out the bid to see if we could just do the the front doors part of the bid, and that came back substantially higher than what it would be if we had done it together. We lose the economy of scale with the contractor when we broke it into two pieces, and more importantly, they told us it wouldn't be done by the start of school. In fact, it would go at least 2 weeks into the school year. And I have concerns about, so your front entrance is under construction, you lose means of egress, and would have to work with the inspectors in the town to see if that would even be feasible. So I did discuss this with the chair, because at your last board meeting, you had authorized him to sign the contract if it came in within range. So it didn't. So given that only one contractor bid on the project, and that the project exceeded cost estimates and the amount of funds available, and that the project could not be completed from the start of the school year, it would not be in the best interest to move this project forward this summer. So what I do believe, though, in light of what this is, I think the board should ask the administration to seek proposals for a comprehensive study review of Mount Anthony Union High School. Rather than continue to cherry pick projects like, let's do this year and do that. We need a master plan. This is a 50-plus-year-old building. In all probability, you're not going to get a new high school. So I think the district should consider going out for an RFP to have a professional engineering firm come in and give us an overview of everything from ADA compliance in our bathrooms, in our locker rooms, in our weight rooms, in our office. All of that needs to be looked at. It's going to cost you some money. What I'm proposing is you ask us to go out and come back to you with what we think that cost, the scope of that RFP may cost to have an engineering firm come in, complete with drawings. It could be several $100,000, but what's the cost of replacing a high school? You'd come close to $200,000 if you wanted to build a new high school. And that's not going to happen. So how do we preserve this?
200 million.
What did I say?
$1,000.
Let's do it tomorrow.
You got a bid.
There's that one bidder again. So that's what I think that we should do. And Paul is in agreement. He was unable to be here tonight. That we should come up with a blueprint roadmap, literally a blueprint from an engineering point of view. We've done a great job of keeping it. Paul's been on top of things, roof systems, boilers, but it's an aging building, an aging infrastructure. So what do we need to spend? And then an engineer would give us priorities over what you do, and then we could turn that into a 5-year plan, or heaven forbid, as we may have to look at a bond issue. The bonds on this building are retiring soon. You may have to consider that, and so I want you to hear that from me. It sounds like a big money job to do the front office, $500,000, $500,000, $600,000, but to get another 25 or 50 years out of that high school, it's going to cost more.
I think that one of the two things that, first of all, we were very late in putting this proposal out.
Yeah.
In many cases, many of the subcontractors were already fully booked, as well as many of the...
That's what, when we look at if we look at the bid individually, it was the subcontractor bids that were
Right.
through the roof that threw the estimate off.
And they just, if I can do it for this, I'll take it, but I've got plenty
Particularly
of...
HVAC and doors and windows. Those
Right.
three.
The other thing is that I think that this is the Mount Anthony district, and we also have the middle school. And part of this evaluation, I think, should include, maybe not in so much detail as the high school, but I certainly think that we ought to be aware of what some of the things that we should be aware of in the middle school.
Future liabilities.
Future liabilities. I know that Tim and other people have been, Darlene and other people have been adamant about trying to get a little air conditioning in here because it's extremely hot. But anyway, I think we should also include that somehow or other in any sort of proposal we do.
Well, we could do that as an alternate, because let's see what the cost comes back of what having this type of full
Sure.
scope study is.
I think that's it. Amy, did you have a question?
Can you talk about a little bit when some last
big expenditures were made at the high school? Like when big infrastructure projects were done, what those numbers were, or what the projects were?
So the
Just-
last big would probably be either the wood chip plant, and before that, the addition of the CDC, but they both predate me, so I couldn't tell you what that cost would have been, and then well before that would have been the academic wing in the back, that was in the
Right.
80s, right? So, so even that qualifies as a pretty old
So
building.
like, you're talking about 30 years, 30.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Where we did the buildings for all of the
Right.
groundskeeping equipment in the back.
right. I mean, we know we replaced the fields and we've done, but in terms of
Correct.
major construction or major renovation or major improvements, we haven't done anything.
No.
And as far as I know, we haven't had any comprehensive evaluation of the plant and with recommendations that would have a priority as to what we should do. And as we know, those people that were at the last meeting with Steve and things, that, you know, we have some concerns that may not have been as evident a while ago as they are now, and therefore we may have to address
along
them.
with an engineer could help us with code and compliance issues as you start entering that level of renovation, and if you spend a certain percentage on renovating your building, then you need to bring it up to current code, so we would need guidance on that, so we don't step too much into that.
Does anybody have any further questions?
Nelson had patiently at his finger.
Well, I was waiting, but you covered part of it. What I'd like to do, I guess, is I think you need to do the full studies you're talking about, but there's a code issue, and I think we need to prioritize what's a must-do and get a price,
Yeah.
and then what's a nice thing to do, versus having people come in with a study that says it's gonna cost you $2 million to fix these 2 schools up the way you need to.
Yeah.
Let's really get the list, and when we do the RFP, make it clear that we need to have some priority on the must-dos
So-
and then what the nice things
So
are.
I think, once we have an idea of like who could do this study for us, before we actually go out and write the RFP, it might be helpful that your facility/budget committee, we hold a meeting and ask the potential firms to come in and give us a presentation on what they could do for us. I mean, this is their expertise on what they think we should be looking at.
Very good.
That's
Any,
exactly what I was gonna say that need to happen. Because the request for the RFP, we need to be able to know what these people can do for us
What the scope of
before
the
we
work will
award
be.
something.
okay,
Yeah,
there-
it's not gonna, the RFP is not gonna happen, I mentioned it really just to start the
Right.
conversation, but we have a long march toward that, and that, I agree, Leon, bring some vendors in and pose the questions to them.
Yeah.
okay, are there any other
I have
questions?
one related
Yeah.
question that predates everybody here almost. When the wood chip plants were built, the state was supposed to pay something like 80 or 90% of the cost, and they withheld that money at the time because they didn't have the cash out of Montpelier, and I'm wondering, did we ever get it? The promise was that someday, yes, we'll appropriate it, but I don't know that we ever got
I
it.
don't, I
We
know,
got what we
I know that the state withheld money for the construction of this building for a long time, and I'm not sure. Renee would know. I can't answer it.
Yeah,
We'd have to look into it.
I didn't expect either one of you to answer it, but
Sure.
it's
Well,
like a
we'll-
Renee question to do a historical
We'll-
search.
we'll take a
and
look.
find out.
Any other questions? Yes, Fran?
The only thing that I would caution this board on is that we have a situation in the office area with students and
Right.
everything, so that obviously should take precedence over anything else. If we gotta nitpick or do little by littles, because that's a big liability there, so.
And that's a good point,
That's a
Fran,
good-
that
good
one thing I
point.
didn't mention, we may be back at this board, and Tim
Yeah.
already alluded that maybe we were a little too late to the dance.
Yeah.
So we could be back to the board, separate from what this RFP study is,
Yeah.
to go ahead to rebid that project.
Yeah.
And we may, the term that they use is value engineer it, like what can we cut out to get it into the price that we want?
Yeah.
That we think we can spend.
Yeah.
That's
And may
good.
hopefully get more than one bidder if we do
Right.
it earlier.
Right. That's a good point, Fran, thank you. Anything else? Okay, we can move on then, we have contracts here. The contracts, the different contracts have been approved by the different associations. So we need to, as a board, approve them. The first contract is the teacher's contract. We've already been over the details of it.
It's 3.5% new money is and that's within what's budgeted. Doesn't necessarily mean anyone's getting a 3.5% raise, because it ranges from where you are on the steps, but it will cost the district 3.5% new money.
And the insurance remains as it had been in the past.
And it's a one-year
And
contract.
it's a one-year contract. And there was no other language changes in the contract. Everything else remained as it was. So I have a motion?
So moved.
Second it.
Any further, excuse me, further questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed or abstentions? Okay.
I'm going to abstain.
Okay. Very good. One abstention. Richard, you all set? Okay, we have the educational support team.
Exactly,
Second.
exactly the same amount.
Same thing.
No,
It's the same thing.
okay, it's the same, basically the same. There was, after the teacher's contract was settled, it seemed to be an impetus for the ESP people to follow the same route. So, have a motion?
It's moved and I second it.
Yeah.
Fran?
Yep.
You seconded, okay. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed or abstentions? And the final
I
one,
abstain.
okay, you abstain. And C is the employees who are non-represented by a bargaining unit. Jim, do you want to
The
give?
recommendation is a 3% increase of that. That's what historically you've given the past 2 years. And it is like the range of what the teachers and support staff really got. As I said, 3.5% really wasn't their raise. It was 3.5% new money, which also covered step and cost of living. So recommendation is 3%.
Have a motion?
So moved.
Have a
Second it.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? Very good.
Okay.
Yeah, you want to abstain again?
No, I'll vote yes on that one.
Okay. Very good. We go down to the consent agenda. Fran,
So moved.
have a second? Any discussion on the consent agenda? Any of the items on it? If not,
Does this include the new personnel that we're approving?
Personnel.
We have a guidance director and some other positions.
right,
It's on
yeah,
there.
Yes.
yeah,
Okay.
it does.
I have a question on, and I don't know if anybody here can answer it, but the information on the guidance director said there was only one applicant.
I,
I'm wondering why we only had
it
one
was
applicant.
posted, I know it was posted. I can't answer that, Jim.
I can't answer why only one applied. I know that it was posted according to the contract and policy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if we have a sleeping problem that we're not aware of, where people aren't interested in coming here.
So the director of guidance position was actually internally filled,
It's
so
internally.
somebody who
Yeah.
moved up, but yeah, I don't,
It was posted, there's School Spring is a,
Right, I know what School Spring is.
okay, it was posted on that. So it was made available to people that might be interested. I can't answer it.
Yeah. And I don't know that it's an issue with our district per se, or an issue with Vermont.
so this is what, when you get an issue like that before, I asked that you, if you could call me in advance, then I wouldn't be
Okay.
sitting here telling you I don't know that answer, or I could.
Yeah, I'm not trying to trick anybody.
No, I know, and I would want to give you an answer, but I can't, I don't have it here right in front of me.
And Steve isn't here, he could be.
Right, and Steve left early.
Has everybody had, the people that resigned had exit interviews, or?
There are exit interviews that were scheduled today and some tomorrow. We can't force somebody to come in, but
Right,
they are
right.
offered, yep.
Is it
Okay.
appropriate to ask, I don't know if it is, why a certain, I was surprised to see a certain resignation in here, I didn't know if that's appropriate, I don't know.
Are you talking about possible English?
Yes,
Okay, I don't know either.
I don't think it would be
It's not
Appropriate,
yeah.
it's not
Appropriate.
appropriate,
in a public meeting to,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, we can, are there any other questions on the consent agenda? If not, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed or abstentions? Very good. Go down to policies, Rob?
And the policy that's here to be adopted, we'd be the first to adopt it, is an update of anaphylaxis. And I guess now would be the time if anyone wants to discuss any of the policy. But I don't think there's anything terribly controversial on it, except Ed might find something.
I have one question. That it states in there that the parents are responsible for informing the school nurse of the need. How do we guarantee that they're gonna inform the school nurse?
They
Because
don't get it.
do we have a liability issue if they don't, and a student has a problem that we don't know how to deal with?
Don't believe, and we did not have this reviewed by legal, right?
No, this is in the administrative regs, I think, piece that you're talking about. You're asking a question about the administrative regs in terms of, you know, how parents are supposed to provide information for.
Right.
That's up to the administrators to do that and how they ask for that along that line. And it's supposed to be the regular part of the policy. I think that's what that is. I didn't pull that up out here along that line, but somebody asked a question about certain types of things and the notification in terms of the information going out to the parents at the beginning of the year, asking for certain types of information or how information is provided back to the school so that they can be administered in terms of management with the nurse.
So the short of it is that is not what the consideration of the policy was. The regulations are put together by the administration.
Yeah.
And that's their determination here. And Leon, I don't recall if this is one where we moved a part of the policy to be exclusively the regulations, or this is part of that sort of trend that we're doing, but it's.
No, that was all,
it's
that was
policy.
out there from the administrative rig, so it was right at the topic of just dark print in there for administrative rig that says what the changes and things were on that, but not other part of the policy.
Nelson?
Yeah, how do we tell people that they're supposed to do this? We have a policy now that says the parent's supposed to notify the school so that they can handle the child. How do we notify? Just let the people that's moving to town, they have a problem with their child. Do we have something that goes out at the start of school so parents that have these problems know?
Yeah, there's
Yes,
paperwork.
you
that-
do.
Yeah, you have to fill out.
So that they know that the policy is they have to notify.
And it's not the policy that's notifying, it's the regulations on the policy. And technically, I think we could approve or disapprove regulations as well, but that's from the administration. The policy is more blanket and straightforward, and it's as it's written, that it's the policy to provide. And then the regulations are the means by which the policy is going to be implemented. So the notification part of parents being responsible for notifying the school, that's actually not part of our policy. It's the regulations that the administration is recommending. And that's why we're not getting deep into the weeds there. Is that we have this policy that we want the administration to follow, and that's what they're doing. It sounds like there's a question on that particular part, which is not really what's before the board here. We're just approving the policy part of the language of just the policy rather than the regulation part.
Yeah,
and I know that's difficult because we have the regulations attached right to the same document as the policy, which maybe that's something we could talk about making clearer in the document, but we've generally included all of the regulations unless it's so voluminous, just so it's available rather than for approval.
I just find that we get lots of policy, and everybody doesn't get to see the policy until they want to look something up because something occurred. And that's what my concern is, that some parent doesn't know that they need to make sure that my kid is carrying in their backpack.
For everybody, in order for kids to get in there, and Tim's is sitting in here, he's in here, all the parents get information for their kids before they show up to school. And in there's a handbook and other stuff that goes over and list all the pertinent policies and things that they need to be aware of and the procedures they need to be following. So, I mean, I'm just throwing out, he's one of the principals here, and everybody, these questions are out here. You can't get into school without that. A student cannot actually come and register and come to school without getting all this information with the parent and the student.
Okay, any other questions on this? Nelson? Okay,
Just want to make sure that we,
let's see, have we voted on that yet or not? Do we have a motion?
There's a motion and a second.
Oh, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor of adopting the program signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? Very good. Okay, committee reports, Carrie?
Okay, so there was no food service advisory committee that met in May. That was canceled, so they are gonna meet again in the fall. The agriculture and land committee met on May 6th, and we'll just cover a couple highlights, I guess. There are 3 large rotating new production beds with 3-foot walkways in between so that the students aren't stepping on any of the crops that are growing. One of those beds will be in use with about 6 to 7 crops planted, and the other 2 will have cover crops, and then they'll rotate those. So that's how they decided to do that, to be effective. The other thing that had a lot of discussion is a couple of the committee members went over to the CDC to check out some of the tools that the middle school inherited from the CDC that came from the farming program that is no longer in use. And so they discovered there were a lot of tools. So we did discuss ways to store those, and I think that's still in the works. I think the sustainability teacher is able to store them in the wood shop over the summer while there's no students, and then I'm sure we'll come back to that if they need more space. And lastly, I guess we're planning to meet again July 22nd, just to get, even though it's the summer, this is sort of like the high season for the garden, and the farmer will be there working hard all summer, so that gives everybody a chance to see what's actually happening. And then other possible working meetings through the summer to weed or to work together if people are interested in that.
Carrie, who's actually doing the work? Are the kids involved in some of this during the summer, or is it just?
I don't know about kids coming during the summer, except for mosaic programs, yeah.
There
So
are
with-
kids, Tim, that,
With the
As Carrie
farmers.
said, it's through Mosaic. It's so students signing up for the Mosaic program and, working on a daily basis. They can sign up for a week, they could sign up for multiple weeks as far as that's concerned. In the past, we have worked with community partners, including the Tutorial Center and the Youth Ag Program, where you actually had high school age students who were paid to maintain garden plots, but it would have been a separate garden from the middle school garden.
good. Well, thank you, Carrie. Any questions on that? We have no education report or finance report. We've been through those. We can go down then.
We had a policy meeting too. You're getting committees, right? Is
Oh,
that separate?
policy, there was a policy meeting.
Yeah, I was reading that as, that's the bullet point, and then there were no reports afterwards. But regardless, we did meet at the beginning of this month. It was a discussion of the eligibility for athletics.
Students, yeah.
And extracurriculars. The discussion ended essentially with an approval, but it's not before the board now. But as I was referring to earlier, what the policy committee has been doing, it's been for at least the last year, is trying to review policies. Sometimes when it comes up from recommendations of administration, sometimes others, is turning the policies less into the blueprint regulations, but instead having it be like the anaphylaxis, where recognizing the problem, indicating a preference. With anaphylaxis, it was immediately recognizing it and addressing it, and also notifying the parent, and doing that on a more regular basis, where we'll defer far more to the administration and their expertise, rather than, this is my word, rather than micromanaging the actual running of the school. And we'll see when we get to it that this is one of those policies that does that.
There was a discussion this morning at another meeting about and I said, what's the right term that the people use smoking now, the
Vaping.
vaping, the vaping, is that included was that amended to the policy? I remember we talked about it. But
I said this morning.
It's
that it was.
covered,
Yeah.
that's been covered
I
and
don't
covered
recall
and
when-
covered.
Yeah, I don't
Okay.
recall if we adopted it, but we had gone through it.
Okay.
The recommendation came from the high school a year or so ago, and that policy is up to date with all the right language to do everything, so. And then just to follow up, what Rob was talking about was that student eligibility policy. All of the things that didn't need to be in the policy was shifted to administrative regs, because we're trying to separate out the middle school and the high school in terms of proficiency-based learning and how you do those things and so forth. So the policy was set up in a manner to do that, and so it's going to be ready for us to do a final review and then go to SVSU in August, and then ready for boards in September.
The reason that I brought that up about the vaping was that there was a discussion that it is becoming much more prevalent within the schools. Tim, is that, do you find that, or?
We do find vapes in the middle school.
And are the policies that we have enforceable, or is it like so many of these other things that it's hard to do something?
Well, you can use the procedures that you use for tobacco, as far as, taking educational opportunities for kids. I mean, there are, detentions and things that get signed, but you also can use resources within the building and send kids off to, classes and talk to them about, what you're doing, why it's not a healthy choice, how you can stop if that's what your wish is. But the vape is a new challenge. I mean, it's harder to detect. They're very small devices. They look like common objects that you find in a kid's backpack. So I would just say, yes, we have them in the building. We find them occasionally. The one bright spot is that I find that kids will come and find adults and say, look, it's in the building. This is where you're going to find it. We don't appreciate it finding it in spaces that we're trying to, go get a drink of water, go use the restroom, so that's a positive on that
You
side.
have the tools you need to do what you can
Yeah.
do to be able to.
Yeah, we have resources in the building to, again, you're using it as an educational opportunity for kids, but it is absolutely something we deal with in the middle school.
And am I right, or somebody mentioned this, that the nicotine in that type of vaping is twice as high as when cigarettes and other?
Yeah, we had a presentation this year, collaboration with some community groups came in, and I'm not as familiar with, I don't use the device personally, but I was surprised to hear, the chips that go in that actually deliver the product. The equivalency of packs of cigarettes was pretty amazing. Also, the flavored ones
Right.
specifically targeted at young users, with the idea that kids get the message that it's not as unsafe as cigarettes, which is not true.
Right.
And they were really good about stressing to the parents who showed up for the conversation that the chemicals in these are a detriment too. So.
Very good, thank you. It was just an eye-opener to me, anyway. Okay, are there any other questions? We can move on then, down, Tim, for your report.
I'll just cover a couple of quick things. It's been a busy couple of weeks at the middle school, so I'll stick with May and June. We had a band concert on June the 4th. Rebecca Mills, I just want to recognize her effort. She's a first-year band teacher at the middle school. We really appreciate her arrival. I get consistent praise from both the community and parents. They're so impressed with the progress of the band, grades 6, 7, and 8. They all perform independently. She also does a nice job talking at the beginning of concerts about expectations of how you are an audience member. And that's not only for our students, but for our audience, and I appreciate that. Yesterday, we had award ceremonies in the morning for individuals, students, grades 6, 7, and 8. I want to thank the moms and dads and families who came out for that. We started at 8:15. We had a consistent showing of parents and families out to recognize kids. It was very nice to see. Again, we took the opportunity to talk to our students about how you present yourself as a member of the audience, and I have to say the members of the audience for the morning were outstanding, so I appreciated that. Eighth grade celebration was last night. The streak continues. 7 years I've been in this building. We've never had to do it inside. I know we'll be doing it inside next year. But 252 eighth graders in this class. This is a big class historically. Normally we have about 200 to 210 kids, but the kids did a nice job. They got dressed up. They combed their hair. They did a nice job as an audience. I do want to thank Darlene Jones and the staff. They placed chairs out in the morning. It rained on us in the middle of the day. They were out there in the afternoon with leaf blowers, making sure all those chairs were dried off, so I appreciate that. I also want to thank the 8th grade celebration committee, which is parents and community members, including Amy, who did a very nice job after the kids do the celebration. They have a dance and a party afterwards. Great food, great activities, a very nice gift for all the kids, so I want to thank the committee for that work. Today we celebrated our annual barbecue with staff. We do a potluck here at the middle school. It's a very nice tradition. I just want to recognize the fact that we have 2 retirees this year at the middle school. Maria Lanou, who is the librarian here, is retiring after 28 years of service. She corrected me today when I did my presentation. I know Maria has already have some opportunities next year that she's really excited about, and I'm very happy for her. Cindy Valley, long-serving special educator, 24 years of service, retired today. I wish Cindy good luck. She's got a couple of procedures lined up and hoping for a very quick recovery, and I hope for that as well. But it's been a busy couple weeks at the middle school, but we're almost done. Tomorrow is the last day with teachers in the building.
Thank you, Tim. I just want to happen to be at the ceremony last evening, and I was very impressed with the general attitude and the way the kids behaved themselves. They all looked spit and polish. They got dressed up, their hair was combed, some had ties, they looked very well. But even more importantly than that, I was impressed with the support that those kids gave to other kids who in many cases, you could tell that they needed a little extra hand getting around, getting in the seats and everything else. And the kids were very, very supportive of them as they went through. They had smiles on their face, and I was impressed. It was a nice showing, so thank you, Tim.
Sure.
Tim, can I just say something?
Yes.
I really appreciated this words that you imparted on the 8th graders at the awards ceremony. You really gave a long few minutes about expectations, and I think that really made a difference. And also, I think it was good for the parents to hear as well, that, yeah, your kid, you should put a little effort into tonight, so I appreciate you taking the time to do that, for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. We have no student report this time. Superintendent's report?
So I want to make you aware that this summer, one of the summer projects that's going to take place at central office is a staffing and attrition study along with the HR department, and we'll also be reaching out to the principals. The goal of the study is to produce a 5-year plan outlining the anticipated openings, not just to Mount Anthony and middle school and high school, but to all our districts, and looking at where we anticipate retirements and openings may come in the next 5 years. The study will place values on the replacement of staff. Up until this point, it's been a pretty automatic. Somebody retires, we post it and advertise it. So the intent of this thoughtful review is that we produce staffing levels necessary to effectively educate our students and run our schools, but to be mindful of trending student enrollment numbers versus traditional levels. So it's a nice way of saying that our goal is to look at every retirement and make a decision so that we can advise boards whether you need to replace it or that position, or whether you should be looking at not filling that position. Because as you've heard, concerns have come to this board and other boards that we haven't been doing that. We have not been looking at staffing levels, and there's been some comments, but that student numbers have dropped dramatically, but staffing levels remain the same. Education has changed in delivery. There are positions that we have now in our schools that were not there when many of us were in school, And I'm not talking just about, I'm talking about things like school adjustment counselors, social workers. They all factor into that head count. So we want to do a thoughtful report to, and not just have a reactionary thought on whether a position should be filled or not. So just want you to know that that project will be going on. As some people in this room may know, the legislature voted a lead bill, that lead in our drinking water bill. And we had to conduct what's called a TAP survey by June 28th. And it is what it sounds like. It's a survey of how many taps we have, water taps, in all our schools. And I want to thank Paul Gansero publicly, even if he's not here. Mount Anthony's report and online survey is already done and been submitted to the state in advance of that deadline. So it is kind of amazing when you see the breakdown. The high school campus has a total of 101 water samples listed on the TAP inventory, and the middle school has even more. There's 198 total TAP samples here. And assuming, Paul might be very aggressive, assuming 5-minute processing time for sample collection, it should take about 9 hours to do the high school and about 16.5 hours to do the middle school. So that survey got submitted to the state, then the state is gonna come back and tell us which ones need to be done. When will this actually take place? We don't have a date, as I said here tonight, but it is slated to be the 19-20 school year. And the survey that Paul had to fill out was like, who's the contact person? They will look at this list of taps, the tap inventory, and decide how many sample bottles they need to send to us. And then we will get instructions then when this actually will happen, and then where we submit those samples. So that we are done phase 1 for your district, so thank you to Paul for that. Tomorrow at 4 p.m., the Vermont Department of Education will release a snapshot of the performance of all districts throughout the state. We have seen it, we have seen some of the results, but it's embargoed until then. We cannot release that information until the state releases it at 4 o'clock tomorrow. And once that is done, we have drafted a press release with the help of Derek, our public information coordinator, that will address what we see from it. The snapshot, the annual snapshot, though, what it does, and some of these questions came up already earlier, it shows detail about the school's achievement in meeting the Vermont educational quality standards. And what we hope it will do, it will help us identify successes and the areas that we need to improve and add to our continuous improvement plans for our schools. So it's, this first release is focusing mainly on English language, arts, and math. Like somebody asked about physical education. I don't believe that that is going to be on this, but they're going to be releasing more information in the fall. It could be on that. And it also, graduation rates is part of what the information that they will be releasing for high school. So once this snapshot is released, and it looks very much like a dashboard. You know, it's a circle with an arrow that, you know, you're on target, or you're improving, you're exceeding, straight up arrow, you're improving a little now, you're declining would be the arrow going down. So it's a visual report as well as a written report, and as I said, it's all districts in our SU and the state will be released at 4 o'clock tomorrow morning, and so we'll dig into it deeper then, and I'm sure we'll be back to you with more information, but I would tell you more if I could, but it's embargoed until 4 o'clock tomorrow.
What's the point of the embargo?
Well,
And I'm not,
it's the
you know,
state's report, and that's when they said they're releasing it, but they sent it to us earlier to look.
look for errors.
Right, like, you know, grade alignment issues, like, did they get the grades right, how, because every school is different. So we can't correct anything, but we could comment in this period. And they also had a number of workshops. We had one in our district yesterday. The state came down, and Arlington was here, and I think Manchester came down, and the workshop was how we can interpret those results. They walked us through the results. So
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a statewide release at 4 o'clock. No one can release it early, so that's how it's not unusual. They kind of do that with the SBAC results. We see those first, but we can't release them publicly until they do.
Leon?
Jim, this is a question for you back, and I'm trying to figure out what it is that we need to do, or all the boards need to do. For some time, we had asked that anytime someone left the district, that we look at that position before that particular district or whatever it is, a new candidate was brought forth to the board to be nominated. And so now you just mentioned something about a new initiative, and I'm saying that shouldn't be a new initiative. We've already said that need to be happening, and I thought it was happening, so I'm
So
trying to figure out.
it is happening, but I made recommendations to this board this year about not filling a position, and the board went ahead and filled the position. So why we're doing this study is so that we can apply another argument to the board when we feel that a position shouldn't be filled, that by assigning a weight and what the impact is of leaving that position unfilled. And the problem that we're running into right now, and a lot of it is reactionary. Like, if we could very well have a teacher resign this week because they've accepted a job somewhere else. That position's gonna be filled because the schedule has already been generated. That position needs the students assigned to those classes. So what I'm attempting to do is a projection further out before the principals start drafting schedules that we can say, I think you're gonna have one less whatever teacher. I don't even want to name a subject because I don't want to panic anybody. And that's what I mean by a thoughtful study, that we're not looking to dismiss people, eliminate positions that will result in somebody losing their job, using attrition, projecting when people may be retiring, and making a thoughtful projected so we can plan budget-wise and plan schedule-wise, that I could tell Mr. Payne here that you're gonna have one less teacher on that team next year. And he can have time before the schedule's written to make that anticipation. And we could also do it before we enter budget season. So right now it's,
Yeah, well, that's what I'm trying to hear,
Yeah.
because I know we said, don't do it, and then it comes before the board, and then everybody's decide to vote on it anyway, when administrators are saying, we don't need to fill it. I don't know what we need to do, and no, that's why I'm trying to figure out, why is it that come up that way at the board level, when we're saying, do these things and evaluate it and come back with an administrative recommendation, and we don't follow it.
We haven't had a system of analyzing whether or not we needed to fill a position or could eliminate it when somebody retires, and I've asked for such
Right,
a system in the past, and finally we're getting it.
Good.
And to Leon, to your point, I don't think I might know how you feel on it, but I don't know if this board has actually taken a decisive vote that creates a practice that when we fill a position or not. And I don't always sense consensus from the board, and I don't just mean Mount Anthony. Other boards are going to say, what are we gonna do about this? And we may come back from the study and find out that we're not as overloaded in staff as some people may suggest, because of the impact of the delivery of education, how the delivery of education has drastically changed. So, but it does, I've heard it from Ed many times. He'll do your quick calculation of how many students are here and how many employees we have, and what's that employee to student ratio, never mind student teacher ratio, what's our employee to student ratio. It does appear high, I grant that, and that's.
I've had members of the public ask me.
Right.
And I don't have an answer
And
justify.
That is the point, that's the point of this study, and over the summer, there'll be people be working on that, and we'll be better informed. Are there any other questions on this particular topic? Jim, is that?
No, that's it.
Okay, just a reminder, there will be no July meeting. If something comes up that has to be voted on by the board, we'll have
I do one more thing.
I'm sorry, yeah.
The board needs to vote to authorize the chair, and in your absence, the vice chair to be able to sign contracts. You do that every summer, so Forrest.
I think we've already got that, but we'll
Did you
do it
already
again.
do it? Yeah.
Yeah, we already have that.
Do that,
Yeah.
yeah.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
too,
Are we
at the
sure that
very
it's
end.
in, it's recorded in the minutes? That
It is.
That happened since March, since reorganization?
Yeah,
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 Okay.
at a reorganization it was done.
yes.
You made Ron a permanent member of the CSU board, but I was there as an alternate. Am I still an alternate, or is that a?
There will be no alternates after,
the alternate now.
That's why I asked that before the meeting.
I thought, anyway,
Why?
It's up to Ron whether he wants.
all right.
do you want it?
So the alternates will not, they will no longer be
Okay.
part of the committee after June 30th.
That's good, there's 12 meetings I don't have to go to. That's why I kept my mouth shut.
I'm sorry about that. Okay, there'll be no meeting. I would like to express my thanks to Amy and to Ron and to Karen Kolkowski for the letters that were written and the gifts that were presented to those teachers that were retiring at a ceremony at the high school. It was very, very nicely done, and we did hear from one of the recipients thanking us. So it was a nice job. And Dave, because of his long association with many of these people, it was a very appropriate thing to have him present the award or the gift to Mr. Tern and to Ms. Estes. So thank you very much. Are there any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion. A second?
Second.
All those in favor? Have a nice summer, everybody.